I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends. Welcome back to Ohio Politics Explained, the last episode for the year that you can listen to while wearing white. Today, we'll discuss J.D. Vance's record on addiction recovery, why Republicans want to recruit poll watchers in Ohio, whether Larry Householder has a shot at his appeal, and how lawmakers want to update name, image, and likeness rules for athletes. Back in the studio today is Erin Glenn.
Happy to be here.
So, summer is almost over, somehow. We're less than 70 days out from the election. Ohio's own Senator, J.D. Vance, has basically been everywhere but the Buckeye State lately to campaign as part of the Trump ticket. One thing we've seen him discuss a lot is addiction, specifically how drugs coming across the southern border are harming Americans. His mom struggled with substance abuse disorder, so this is personal for him, and it's something he wants to address if he gets to the White House. How has he kind of tried to tackle this before?
Yes, so he had a nonprofit called Our Ohio Renewal, which was supposed to look into solutions tackling the opioid crisis. And he announced that back in 2017, but it's kind of fizzled out now. And he's pivoted, as you pointed out in your story, to focusing on border control and preventing fentanyl from coming in from Mexico.
Yeah, the nonprofit, he was looking at this back before he was even a Senate candidate. This was after he had written Hillbilly Elegy, and he told a lot of media outlets at the time that he wanted to use his platform for good, essentially. So he tried to start this nonprofit with a couple friends. It really didn't get off the ground aside from some travel that they did and a residency that they sponsored for a psychiatrist who ended up being very controversial. But one of Vance's friends ended up getting diagnosed with cancer, and it sounds like that was a big reason why they just weren't able to get the work done that they hoped to. And then obviously Vance first ran for Senate, and the rest is kind of history now.
Yeah, and it's a shame because, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in Middletown. It's long struggled with having a population of people who struggle with addiction, like a lot of cities in Southwest Ohio. When I was a reporter in Middletown, I spoke to the director of an addiction treatment center there who said what the city really needs is more recovery housing or sober living options, because when people come out of these addiction treatment programs, they've been focused on getting sober and not getting a job or getting a place to live after they come out.
Yeah, and I've heard Vance talk about some of that stuff, but like looking into his Senate record especially, you see a lot of border legislation. Granted, he's only been in the Senate for a little over a year and a half now, but that's really been a big focus of his. It's what you hear him talk a lot about on the campaign trail. And there's obviously a supply component to the issue of addiction because the drugs are coming from somewhere, but they're also not all coming from the border necessarily. I mean, a lot of people got addicted to prescription pills that were prescribed by their doctors.
Right. And it seems like most of the drugs that are seized at the border are seized at like entry points. So
yeah, so it'll be interesting. Vance has said if he becomes vice president, this is something he kind of wants to be a spokesman on, something that he wants to lead on. And a lot of folks that we talk to think he has a good opportunity to do so, given what he experienced as a kid. But they also said that curbing the flow of drugs at the border is not the only thing that, there's a lot more to this issue.
Right. And Middletown needs a champion for sure.
Our next topic is these poll watchers. The Republican National Committee was in Ohio recently as part of a national effort to recruit people to keep tabs on polling places on Election Day. Ideally, the RNC wants around 5,000 poll observers in all of its target states, which apparently includes us. Erin, you were at their event. What's kind of the thinking here?
The RNC chair, Michael Whatley, said that he's not concerned about voter intimidation with these poll watchers, but he just wants people to look for when voters get too close to voting machines and people who are not registered coming in to vote. Ohio law does allow for poll watchers, but there are prohibitions. Like there can't be more than one at a polling location. They can't carry guns. They're not there to enforce the law or advocate for voters. They're supposed to step outside and call the county board of elections if they they see something. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Did they say at all why they think Ohio is important to focus on? I mean, we're not a battleground state anymore, and you hear Republicans in Ohio and nationally talking about how great they think our voting laws are.
Yeah, it was kind of confusing because Dave Yost said at the event that Ohio is kind of the gold standard for secure elections, but that we need poll watchers in the same breath. So I'm not entirely sure what the thinking is there.
Yeah, it was interesting because before you went to the event, I was looking at their website out of curiosity, and their target states included, the usual suspects like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, states that were really close in 2020. So there was a lot of scrutiny over their election processes during the COVID pandemic. But then there's us. And, Trump won pretty decisively here in 2020. And I think there's an expectation that he's going to this time around. I suppose maybe the Senate race could be close, but.
Yeah, well, and the RNC chair even said that 99.5% of the time there are no problems with voting. So it seems like everyone's in agreement that the issues these poll watchers would be looking out for are extremely rare.
And are poll watchers kind of the main thing that they're looking for, or do they have any other folks that they're trying to recruit for different roles?
Yeah, they're also looking for poll workers. I think poll workers have been hard to find nationally in recent years. And they're looking for attorneys to weigh in on issues surrounding voting.
Interesting. Speaking of attorneys, let's discuss the guy who can't seem to stay out of the news, former Speaker Larry Householder. As you all know, he was convicted last year and sentenced to 20 years in prison for orchestrating the House Bill 6 scandal. Householder appealed, arguing what he did was just politics as usual. And his attorneys outlined a lot of problems they saw with how the trial was conducted. A federal prosecutor responded to their claims and a new court filing this week, and I just don't think they're buying it.
Yeah, the prosecutors went through a list of things that Householder's attorneys mentioned in the bill. They said that the judge, correctly calculated the money that was involved in the scheme, that prosecutors were right to share recordings of Householder talking about his fellow Republicans. They really went point by point and said that this was beyond usual politics in Ohio.
Yeah, I think, there is kind of an open question at this point of how successful his appeal will be. Obviously, he got the maximum sentence possible, and he was even, they were even raising problems about the judge and alleged bias from the judge against Householder, because I think Householder ran a campaign ad against him 10 years or more than 10 years ago. Yeah. Right. So just an interesting array of allegations. Do we know what's next in the process?
Well, Householder's lawyers have asked for a new trial, a new sentence, or just to dismiss the case entirely. Prosecutors obviously want the 20-year sentence to stand. I think the judge is the next person to weigh in on this.
Well, it seems to be the saga that will just not end. So I guess we'll see how that goes. Our final topic for today is a timely one with the impending start of college football season: name, image, and likeness. Governor Mike DeWine signed an executive order a few years ago that lets college players make money off of sponsorships and endorsements. Two lawmakers unveiled a new bill this week to update the program and, in their view, make changes to keep Ohio schools competitive. What's the gist of this?
Yeah, so college athletes can make money through product endorsements and sponsorships. And this bill is kind of clarifying lawmakers say they want the student athletes and universities to be able to work more directly with NIL collectives, which are these nonprofit organizations that are associated with universities. And they get money from donors, alumni, fans, and help kind of do these kind of brand deals. So the bill clarifies that college athletes can have an agent or a lawyer look over these contracts, and that the universities are not liable for student athletes' agreements with third parties.
Yeah, I would imagine, and I'm speaking as someone who didn't read the details of the executive order, but executive orders, I think, are often a little less comprehensive than legislation. So with DeWine doing that, they may have left some holes in the process, and it sounds like that's what they want to clear up.
Yeah, and there was NIL legislation added to the budget in 2021, but I think lawmakers are trying to keep Ohio competitive with other states around the country. And, there's a lot of changing things in the legal landscape nationally and settlements that still need to be worked out. So I doubt this is the last time they'll update NIL rules.
And 2 more things before you go. First, the Secretary of State's office has mailed out absentee ballot applications to all registered voters in the state. If you don't get one, election officials recommend checking your registration status at voterlookup.ohio.gov just to make sure that you are in fact registered and everything looks good. And finally, Oak will be taking next week off. We hope you all have a great holiday weekend. Ohio Politics Explained is brought to you by the USA Today Network Ohio Bureau. You can check us out on X, formerly known as Twitter, @Ohio Explained.